So I think if for no other reason than the equipment is now almost completely broken, I think it's time to go home.
I think it probably
It
is.
is. Oh, shit.
There's the pre-titles.
Welcome to Cloud Realities, an original podcast from Capgemini, and this week co-sponsored by AWS. We are live at the Venetian here on the Strip in Las Vegas at AWS reInvent 2025. I'm Dave Chapman.
I'm Esmee van der Giessen.
And I'm Rob Kernahan.
And this is the final episode of the week from AWS reInvent 2025, so we have a packed episode ahead. Later in the show, we've got Matt Gillard. He's the co-founder of Cuidado Connect, and he's the co-host of Cloud Dialogues, and he's going to give us a view on dev community, which is such an important culture as part of reInvent, as well as any announcements that resonated with him. We'll also be wrapping up our week, giving our thoughts on what we've heard, what we can expect for the next year as a result, and then we might return to the fact or fiction debate and give some thoughts on what we've heard about that this week. But before we get to all that, I'm glad to say that joining us for our last episode is Mustafa Isik. He's the Chief Technologist for Sovereignty at AWS. Hey Mustafa, how are you doing?
Hey Dave, happy to be here.
It's good to see you. How's your reInvent been?
It's been busy. It's been, enthralling. It's been thrilling. So it's been all the things that all those reInvents end up being. But yeah, it's been super busy with a lot of, customer interactions, which we love and where we learn a lot. But that's something we do year round. But a lot of press interviews, a lot of analyst briefings. So a lot of the things where we share what we've been up to over the last year.
And how many reInvents is this for you? Are you a veteran, newie?
So you know what? I've been with AWS for now close to 5 years. So I've been here every single year of those. But before, I've been here as a customer. So I was a big AWS user, and I actually introduced cloud computing into German public service media, I have to say.
Oh, wow. There you go. So right at the beginning. Very good.
Well, and also for this year's reInvent for you at least, if not others, your agenda is AI may be the more visible and dominant, but sovereignty, I would say, is equally important in the dialogue this year, isn't it?
I can only confirm. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, when we're gonna unpack sovereignty a little bit and try and understand what it is and how you guys are framing it in some of the product announcements this week, which are very significant indeed, I think. Before we get to that, though, outside of sovereignty, any announcements or any aspect of this year's reInvent that stood out for you?
See, Dave, I mean, I'm sure you're going to ask me about my background, but let me share that now. I'm a computer scientist by trade and education, so I've been in the trenches of software development for many, many decades of my career, and I have to say, all the things that are fundamentally changing about how we went about building software. Hero, for instance, spec-driven development, but then also all those things that Matt had quotes from Anthony Liguori, one of our distinguished engineers and vice presidents too. The type of development productivity that you get by extending your team with agentic capabilities is just mind-boggling. So that's the other thing that very much excites me. Yeah,
very significant stuff. Very significant stuff. Anything caught your eye over the last day or so?
It's I'm going to go back to the opinions thing, the opinionated thing. I know we've said it before, but I think there's a bit more direction coming out about the way you should do it, a bit more end to end. It used to always be the Lego bricks on the floor and off you go, and lots of optionality. But yeah, that's the one for me.
Very good. All right, let's dig into digital sovereignty then, Mustafa. So why don't we start? Why don't you frame it up a little bit for us? Like, how do you define it? And it is one of those things that's evolved, I think, in its definition quite a bit over the course of the last, let's say, 2 years, but might be 3. It's started out as something I think that was about data residency, and now has become a much bigger conversation, hasn't it?
Absolutely. And as with many things, I would even say applies to foundational domains like IT security too. These things change all the time. Right. But then again, there are some foundational concerns around those, some foundational challenges and, mitigation mechanisms that become ever more intricate. So when we look at digital sovereignty and when we started looking at this many, many years ago, you obviously look at, well, what's the definition is there a definition that you can work towards, that you can solve for, right? Can you capture the challenge that customers, partners, regulators, policymakers, the public actually associate with it? And it turns out when you look at digital sovereignty, there is no generally agreed upon definition. But then again, it might lead one or the other to think, well, if there is no clear definition, maybe this is nothing, or is this even just in quotation marks, a communication problem?
Yeah.
It turns out it's not. When you look at the definitions, like for instance, the German Ministry of the Interior has had a definition for digital sovereignty forever, right, for many, many years. But then again, these definitions, either they end up being very, very short and very generic, and then they're not actionable, or they end up, for those that offer one, a closed definition, a longer one, more specific one, they end up being so specific that you can't really transfer them and make them applicable to others either. So what you then do, Dave, is you dive into, well, any domain that's hard to put your arms around maybe directly, well, how about subdividing it? How about, in computer science, we would say, how about decomposing that system and that domain? And that's what we did.
And there's a huge movement from the European Union associated with sovereignty, AI gigafactories and such like. And they just recently released quite a lot of definition around their seal levels, seal 0 to 4 as an exact sample. So it's definitely a place where governmental organizations are starting to sit up and really take a lot of interest in what is it, what's powering our critical national infrastructure, driving our digital services. Societies don't work without them. And I think there's been quite a stark reaction in the last sort of 18 months, really, to start to define those frameworks, which is driving the way the industry is thinking. It'd be interesting your view on where you think that's going and how it might evolve in the future.
So what we've been doing, Rob, over the last many years now is what we always do, right, when we dive into these things, and that is talk to customers first and foremost, really get their understanding. What is it, right? And if you remember, more than 2 years ago, we published our Digital Sovereignty Pledge, right, where we said, hey, this is one perspective that we have learned from, in my personal case, a 4-digit number of engagements, right? Some of them one-offs, some of them multi-week, multi-month, or in the case of national cybersecurity certification agencies or intelligence agencies, entities, public sector entities that I work with a lot, right? That is based on those insights. And it turns out, let's recap very quickly what the Digital Sovereignty Pledge looks like at AWS. I mean, there is a component around data residency. There is a component around operator access restrictions. There is another component about encryption and encryptability of any and everything when it comes to customer content. And then there is yet another part about transparency and survivability. That's one perspective you can assume, and that's one subdivision. Another, that all the conversations that I have converge towards, and I'd be interested in your perspective too. All those conversations, when I ask for a close definition, and that usually does not come around, you start asking, well, data privacy and data protection, is that relevant to digital sovereignty? And I'd ask you, Rob, is it relevant?
So the way I tend to break it down is it's about autonomy over the services that you're using to deliver. So legal position, operational position, technology supply chain position, data position. Data has always been the thing we discussed about it, which is I need to control over where is my data, who has access, how secured is it, can somebody get hold of it that I don't trust? I think that's at the core of it. So yeah, there's been, has started there traditionally, but it's a lot more around it, but it often is like an onion in my head and data's at the center, but there's loads of layers that have to compound around it, which brings a lot of nuance to the conversation. So I would say if you're a different country or a different sector, you speak to that person about sovereignty, they probably have a different viewpoint on what we're discussing and they're a different opinion. So you go across different nation states and it can vary quite a lot.
I think so. I mean, it's in the eye of the sovereign to determine what digital sovereignty looks like. Yeah. But what we're trying to do now, and what you've already started with in a beautiful way, I think, is let's peel the onion. Let's see where the commonalities are, and then let's talk about what those constituting parts are and how different sovereigns weigh the different constituting parts. So I would say data privacy, data protection, highly relevant to digital sovereignty. And then let's move to two additional pillars. The other pillar that usually always surfaces is IT security, but with a different weighting of the threat model behind IT security. So, in the year 2025, the outgoing year 25 now, and I would even say for the last years before, I mean, we have millions of monthly active customers, right? We have been catering to industries from, 2-people startups to the largest enterprise customers or most restrictive public sector entities globally. And we've been doing that ever since we've been pioneering cloud for 19 years. So IT security is at the core of what we do. But in the context of digital sovereignty, no one truly, when we look at the things today, and also our partnership, for instance, no one truly doubts that you can have a very high security posture, much higher than on-premises in many cases, right? If and when you build on the type of planetary scale investments in AWS does for you, right? Against ransomware, against threat state actors, against zero-day exploits, against cyber vandalism, against organized crime, right? But one parameter in IT security in the context of digital sovereignty that enjoys outsized importance ends up being, operator access restrictions. I understand that I can protect myself best against any and everyone. Can I also protect myself against you? That ends up the second domain. And the third domain, and I close off with that, data privacy, data protection, IT security with a differently weighted threat model. And the third pillar ends up being a different interpretation of resilience, right? Because if we now say, is AWS cloud resilient? Let's just quickly recap, just for our understanding, because that will make other things much, much easier to conceptually grasp. Let's look at AWS from two perspectives. One, an infrastructure perspective. The other is software, a services perspective. From an infrastructure perspective, AWS at last count, manifests as 38 regions globally. The Frankfurt region, the London region, the Stockholm region, the Irish region, right? So 38 of those regions, and every single AWS region is built in a manner that it consists of at least 3 so-called availability zones, right? And those 3 availability zones, at least 3, some have 6, right? 3 availability zones placed in a manner that one catastrophic environmental impact can't take out the internet connectivity and the availability of that whole region. So you look at a region like Frankfurt, where the River Main traverses smack through the middle of that beautiful city. If that would flood, it would not impact the whole region because the availability zones and the many data centers distributed across those 3 availability zones are placed on different floodplains. Now, that's the infrastructure perspective. And if I'd ask you, how often do you think that AWS has lost a full-blown region in 19 years of pioneering this business? What's your guess?
There's very few, if at all any.
Rob, you got it. So never, right? Never. We never place different availability zones on different floors of a building, right? So nothing along those lines where a flooding or an electricity problem would have taken out even more than one availability zone ever. All right, so that's what AWS looks like from an infrastructure perspective. Let's hear me out and let's listen to what it looks from a software perspective, right? And then we'll map the software to the infrastructure. From a software perspective, AWS has services, more than 240, right, that live on every layer of the cloud computing taxonomy. Infrastructure as service services like EC2, platform as a service services like relational database service, RDS, even call centers that you can provision out of the cloud, like Amazon Connect, right? Software as a services. And I'd say we pioneered functions as a service with Lambda too. So when you map the software, the services world to the infrastructure world, what happens? These services have a certain, let's say, infrastructure scope. EC2, when you provision, let's say, a virtual machine with 64 cores, 1 terabyte of RAM, 5 terabytes of block storage, that needs to manifest somewhere in the region of your choosing, right? Let's say you pick the Stockholm region, you pick an availability zone. That EC2 virtual machine or that bare metal server is manifesting in the availability zone in the region of your choice. That's a zonal resource. Your customer content that you place on that server or VM stays there. Now, there are other services that are regional in scope, not zonal, but the next higher abstraction level. Things like S3, for instance. Let's say you have highly regulated healthcare data, 5 terabytes of MRI imaging data. If you say, hey, that needs to stay in, let's say, Paris, you pick that region, and we take the responsibility of replicating those 5 terabytes across the availability zones of that region and the data centers in there in order to provide you with an SLA of, in the case of S3, 11 nines of durability. So that's a regional resource. Most of our services, and that's a key and unique differentiator at AWS, most of our services are either zonal in nature or regional. Now we also have, and now we're coming back into the realm of digital sovereignty. Some of our services are global by design. right? It's not a bug, it's a feature. Like for instance, Dave, let's say you're utilizing Frankfurt, you and your producer, you're utilizing Frankfurt for the raw material of this podcast recording. What you're also doing, though, is you're moving your backups into another region, let's say Paris, because you don't want to use several regions. And maybe you have audit data or financial data, and that lives in Stockholm. At the end of the month, your customers, our customers, or you as a customer want one consolidated bill. And that's a global artifact at AWS. Usage metering, billing, or the configuration of customer-created metadata, authorization or authentication data, things like identity and access management, also global in nature. Now, when we come to digital sovereignty, some customers, for some of their workloads, say, you know what, I understand all the commitments, all the claims, and all the evidences that you make and prove via those 143 security attestations and validations that you have in place about me choosing and being in control over where my customer content lives. Yep. But now I want my customer-created metadata to also be regionalized, in this case, in the EU.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the metadata is a very big point. But what you're defining, there's a big part about sovereignty that isn't often thought about, which is you're only sovereign, or your assets, your digital assets are only sovereign whilst they're under your control. So a good example would be a cyber attack could remove the sovereignty of your assets because you'll no longer have autonomy over the top of them. The services that you're providing, the scalability, everything else means those assets are there, they're up, they're working, which means that's a fundamental part of sovereignty. And often people don't remember that there is a different way to think about sovereignty that says it's not just about protecting everything and bunkering it, but it's actually about creating a resilience, and used the word earlier, survivability, which is really important. The survivability of your services under stress and your ability to recover is as important as the sort of thing you might want to stick it in a building that's a bunker with a guard on the gate and everything else, etc. So I think, and one of the things I observe, and I'd be interested in your point of this, is the maturity of the thinking around that point is starting to see that cloud might actually be the savior of sovereignty in a number of things because it provides a flexibility and a resilience that is very hard to build yourself.
Rob, I couldn't agree more. When we dove into this domain of digital sovereignty, dedicatedly under the banner of digital sovereignty, what we keep hearing from customers and have been forever? When you talk to them about digital sovereignty, and when you talk about the proliferating or changing requirements or interpretations of existing or proliferating regulation, the one key aspect, the one key insight that every conversation always converges towards. For some, it's just as you did it now, it's a starter. For many, that insight comes later, depending on the maturity level of the customer's technological capability. But in the end, customers say, hey, you know what? You can't give me something lesser for me to be sovereign. I want full-blown AWS. I want all the breadth of services. I want all the depth of services. I want AWS when I'm talking to AWS. So the question for us ended up being, in the European case now, right? Okay, so full-blown AWS, what does that mean? What does it mean to deliver the same services, the same APIs, the same service level agreements to customers while catering to the requirements that we just discussed along the lines of customer-created metadata and keeping that regional?
So what was the internal conversation at AWS? And ultimately, what was the journey to the announcement this week? And then maybe let's talk about specifically what the announcement was.
Yeah. So, Dave, the journey has been a long journey, but when we started hearing about digital sovereignty, a question that, our board, our leaders, my colleagues, and I myself asked ourselves ended up being, well, what is digital sovereignty, right? And we already talked about it. Is this something beyond data privacy, because we've been dealing with that globally in all kinds of jurisdictions? Is it something else than IT security? Because we've been dealing with that. It's foundational to cloud technologies, multi-tenant architectures and environments. And we've been looking at that. And what we did, we took our time to talk to customers and regulators. What people know about are the longstanding relationships like with the German National Cybersecurity Certification Authority, right? BSI, or in Spain, CCN, right? And all over the globe. So the conversation was, Dave, let's dive into the requirements. Let's see what has changed in terms of either new domains that exist under that banner or the different weightings. And then you can talk about mitigation mechanisms. And that's what very quickly led us to the conviction that, you know what, in order to cater to customers' requirements, also in terms of what Rob said, providing full-blown all the functionality and all the APIs, making sure that all the enablement that customers and all the experience that customers have gained by building on AWS over the last decades, that comes to bear. It turns out, you know what, you do what you have already done very successfully for customers, and that is reinstantiate the cloud, but this time regionalized, in this case, to the European Union. Because in essence, remember when I promised, hey, this will be easy to conceptually grasp? I think we've arrived at that point, and that is, this is regionalized infrastructure, this is regionalized services, this is all the things that used to be formerly global artifacts in terms of customer-created metadata, regionalized to the EU.
So where previously the global AWS cloud was physically and geographically in lots of different places and dispersed in a way that created very high resilience, and then abstracted in a way that allowed you to engage at it in a pure software as utility sort of way. What this is doing is creating the same experience, but removing the geographic and sovereign abstraction and putting it locally, so you get the same experience, but with a sovereign wrapper.
It's like a massive cut and paste, isn't it, though? That's what you've done. You've basically taken everything and gone, we'll copy it and we'll make another version of it, but it's exactly the same.
You know what? I think I agree 99% with what Dave said, and I think, Rob, you captured it well too. But Dave, the one part where I'd say it's a little more nuanced is the geographic distribution part, because it's, kind of like in IT security where you have a multi-layered protection architecture. You have a multi-layered geographic distribution architecture too. Yeah. You mentioned the global distribution of our regions, but even inherently, every single one of our regions, as we discussed, is also geographically distributed just in a metro area, right? So you have multiple availability zones that are, again, as we discussed, placed in a manner and data centers distributed across those, that one catastrophic environmental impact can't impact the availability of the region. So the European sovereign cloud, and you put it well, Rob, it is the copy and paste. It is all the things that are right. But this time, it's a new region, the new nucleus of a new cloud that we're building as the first region, kind of like we started with the Northern Virginia region, right? This new cloud is being started, and we're starting it in the state of Brandenburg in Germany, which surrounds the city-state of Berlin. It's a full-blown AWS region. Plus, all the things that formerly used to be global are now European out of Brandenburg. So it's a full-blown region that can grow, that cloud, by additional regions if need be, by additional local zones, by additional dedicated local zones, by additional outposts, so by additional infrastructure that can again then form, a conglomerate of AWS infrastructure and services.
So if it's a cut and paste of the mothership cloud into a sovereign space, from the point that splits, how does it remain in parity with the main mothership cloud if there is no kind of direct tendrils in a way that would compromise the sovereignty?
Directionality is very important in that sense, right? So because what you do want, what our customers are asking for when we talk about the breadth and depth of functionality is they want to benefit from the global perspective that we have on threats, for instance, right? And creating threat models. They want to be able to tap into the AWS backbone, which Matt Garman just a couple of days ago announced the latest number in terms of millions of kilometers of fiber and subsea cabling that we have, which is super important because the only way to truly protect against distributed denial of service attacks, for instance, is scale in the end, right? So the question ends up being, how do you ensure that customers can benefit from the triple-digit billion-dollar investments every year into technology and infrastructure, but catering to those other aspects that we talked about when it comes to digital sovereignty in a very particular way? It's not that AWS globally is not sovereign by design, but this caters to different interpretations. We talked about the customer-created metadata piece. And that means development still happens in a global manner. And that holds true for all of AWS. Like, for instance, the foundation that we heard something about today, the Nitro hypervisor, for instance, at AWS, the foundation of our confidential compute approach, that's being developed out of Dresden, Germany. Some people in Berlin, some people elsewhere, right? So it's a global development organization. And in the case of security patches, for instance, you want to be able to get those as soon as possible put into, also come to bear and benefit the European sovereign cloud. What we're not doing is, but data, customer-created metadata can't leave. That's what I mean with the directionality ends up being important. So the first pillar ends up being of the European Sovereign Cloud, regionalized infrastructure and services. The second pillar that we haven't touched on is when you look at what AWS operates like globally, our development teams, our service teams, they also operate their services. They have the responsibility to also operate their services all across the globe in all the regions where that service is available. For the European Sovereign Cloud, we've done something else. For several years now, we've been dedicatedly hiring new administrators, system engineers, devs, people who are the exclusive operators of infrastructure and services of the European Sovereign Cloud, who are EU residents who can only assume their operational role while they're physically present in a member state of the EU. So regionalized operations and support. That's the second part. And the last pillar ends up being regionalized governance and leadership. So I'm a German citizen. My boss is a French citizen. He is the managing director of the AWS European Sovereign Cloud German Limited Liability Company. So you might have heard the abbreviation GmbH. And that GmbH, he is accountable to act in the best interest of the German GmbH. And that GmbH controls 3 other subsidiaries. One responsible for the infrastructure, the second one responsible for the personnel operating this regionalized, and the third one is the trust center.
All right.
So in the trust center, Dave, let me just add this, and that is, the PKI infrastructure that we utilize, the root certificate authority, the root certificates, they are separate for the European Sovereign Cloud and also regional to the European Sovereign Cloud.
That goes back to the point of the structure we laid out, the legal and the operational segregation, which is so important for many nation states when it comes from to a sovereign conversation. So you've actually gone like not a complete chop, but it's all within the EU bounds, which is part of the seal definitions as well around under the control of the European Union directly, which is a big part of the positioning.
Thank you for sharing all of that. There's clearly been a great deal of thought about how all that needs to come together and the varying different definitions of sovereignty that it needs to live with. So kudos for getting it to market. The scale of the build as well, massive, I would imagine. Maybe let's just bring our conversation to a bit of a conclusion today by just talking about the release. So I guess two aspects of it for me. Actually when it is available and I could consume the services from the European Sovereign Cloud, but also like if I'm a customer that I've got my data somewhere on the main AWS cloud, what do I do next?
So Dave, just to give you an idea of how massive the investment is, what it means to reinstantiate AWS again, this time regionalized to the EU with additional new colleagues who are the sole operators of this, it's a 7.8 billion euro investment over the next 15 years. And if customer demand warrants us to grow this by even more, then it'll be more. But that's the official number we have put out so far. So, and to your other question about, who can use this, how it's going to be used, and what type of deployment models are we seeing, and what the release schedule looks like. So let's start with that. We announced that we would be ready with the build of that region by the end of 2025, and we're in plan, right? So we're in December, we're at reInvent, we're enjoying the last days in Las Vegas here, and from all I can tell, we're in plan, and things are looking good for us to be done with the build by the end of the year. Let's see when we truly hold the launch event, the marketing manifestation. So that'll happen very soonish too, but I'm not at liberty to say yet.
Fair enough.
But we're done with the build. And then in terms of deployments, Dave, very interestingly, and Rob and Esmee, very interestingly, once you have a product like this, a service like this, a region like this, and the many services available, customers come up with the most creative use cases that I did not anticipate. For instance, when we started out with this, we were, the business case we made for, and we were aiming for public sector customers and highly regulated customers. But now we see much, much more interest. And I think that interest is manifest in our collaboration with Capgemini, for instance, too. We have digital sovereignty competency partners, over 25 of them. And I think you're one of them.
We are.
And then we have over 150 partners who are already working on making their solutions available on AWS European Sovereign Cloud. So what we see in terms of customer interest and the partners that actually are proxies for that too is broad interest. And what we see is customers and segments beyond public sector and beyond highly regulated industries. Some customers are saying, hey, you know what? I have workloads I couldn't move into cloud or didn't feel comfortable because, my data protection officer, I couldn't convince about a certain data classification, or I didn't feel right. Whatever the reason may be, now they're saying, oh, but here with the customer-created metadata staying within the EU, I do. So we see on-prem workloads for customers that already had done big data center exits into AWS, now tackling those remaining workloads. We see other customers that say, hey, you know what? This fulfills. I have one really big customer. I'm not at liberty to name them now, but they're commercial sector customer who say, hey, you know what? This is so separate from what you do it globally, but still, I can completely benefit from all the enablement and experience we've built on AWS. This to us qualifies as, essentially single vendor multi-cloud, their word, not mine. So I'm moving my backups there. We see things like that. And we see everything in between, hot disaster resilience deployments. We see deployments where people have their hot standbys in one cloud and the operational workload, the production workload in the other. So all of those creative usages are already manifesting. And let's see, once we're generally available, we will see how customers go about this in more creative use cases.
Well, we'll watch with interest. And as you say, we're a partner and very involved in, I think, an extremely important step forward in making the cloud more available in an increasingly difficult, sometimes geopolitical world. So, Mustafa, thank you very much for sharing all that with us and making some time to join us today.
Thank you very much. I very much enjoyed getting to know all of you and being on the show with you.
Well, before we let you go, though, we've been asking all of our guests this week about the cross between science fiction and science fact. Our thesis being that where TV, books and film have covered tech as an industry and they've covered, how it may well affect our world in various different ways, it always felt like it was in the future. And actually what we're finding now is you go and have a look on the expo floor, and actually most of the technology that's been covered, probably with the exception of space travel, you can pretty much readily access. And I wonder if there's any particular piece of science fiction, either in TV, books or film, that's covered the tech industry that you think was a particularly good or a particularly bad representation of our industry.
So I hope I got it right, Dave. I mean, I was born in 1980, and I'm a full-on geek, as you can tell.
Right.
So I grew up with Battletech and Shadowrun and Babylon 5 and Battlestar Galactica.
Oh, Babylon 5.
Yes, Babylon 5 is the most underrated, most beautiful science fiction show ever, I would say.
Very cool.
Yeah, thank you. See, that's why I liked you guys. So yeah, you've got the right
And
taste.
Battlestar Galactica, is that the original Glenn A. Larson or is it the reboot?
You know what? For the longest time, I would say that I did like the original, but I have to say that the remake from the early 2000s wasn't bad either.
Absolutely
That's
brilliant.
also good. That's really good stuff.
I really, really enjoyed it a lot.
100%. So, you know what? All I can say to that, Dave, if I understand you correctly, is I think we're living in a time that I wouldn't have, even though I'm a geek, I couldn't have envisioned, especially when you look at not only generative AI, but also agentic AI. See, as a software engineer who's been in the trenches for the longest time of his career, all of a sudden you see that you have agents essentially becoming teammates and making you, not just 10x more productive. And that, I have to admit, it still boggles my mind. And these are things that none of the franchises that I now mentioned, none of the intellectual properties, none of those science fiction worlds anticipated. Not to this extent.
Not to this extent. I think the latest, maybe one of the closest of an agent and the way that an agent interacts with sort of supporting and iterating human thought is maybe the computers on Star Trek, in the way that they engage and talk and sort of iterate with the computer almost.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I do. And you know what? So since I'm a Babylon 5 guy, I've never been a Star Trek person. Until what was it called? Enterprise, the recent series?
Enterprise,
Yeah, but I hear that, that proper Star Trek fans don't like that, and I loved it.
I watch it. And I was the next generation. That was Picard was mine. And I must admit, I struggle with it. It's good, but it's not I don't know, it's lost
See, there you
something.
go. Oh, God,
It's not quite right. But anyway.
Well, there you go. But hey, yeah, we're living in an incredibly exciting time where the present is actually becoming more modern. And back in the day, let me share that when I read Asimov for the first time, and that was the Foundation trilogy that I read.
Do you watch the Apple TV series?
I do.
Do you
very
like
different.
it?
I do like it, even though it's so massively different from the books.
It's quite very different, isn't it? Yeah.
But still really good. So that's also quite the achievement. But I remember when I was 20 years old or something and read Asimov, I thought, oh my God, some things here are obviously very, very outdated, even though this is supposed to be the future and the Galactic Empire and whatnot. But I have to say, the degree to which I feel that way today and have been for the last few years is beyond that.
Well, look, on that note, we'll let you go. Thanks again for spending some time with us, Mustafa.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So we come to the end of our week at reInvent 2025. Before we do our team wrap up, a friend of the show, Matt Gillard, who hosts a similar show to ours called Cloud Dialogues, dropped by our recording studio and just gave us an insight into a different side of reInvent, which is the developer side of reInvent. So let's hear it from Matt, and then we'll be back after Matt, and we'll give our reflections and give some thoughts on how it's been this week. Well, I'm very happy to say a friend of the show, Matt Gillard, who's the co-founder of Cuidado Connect and co-host of Cloud Dialogues. How are you doing, Matt? And what does Cuidado mean?
So I'm doing well, thank you. A bit exhausted on day, what are we, 4?
Dave, we are, if you count Monday. Yeah.
Pretty good. Cuidado Connect is a startup that we're doing falls detection in aged care. Aged care needs a bit of disruption, so
and what's the meaning of
Cuidado is care. Spanish for care. Care Connect. There's no domains. You can't get any domains.
No.
.com. Got to be inventive.
Incredibly difficult, isn't it? It's incredibly difficult.
It is.
And how's Cloud Dialogues going?
Yes.
Georgia well?
Yes, Georgia's well. Hi, Georgia. Shout out. Georgia Smith, my co-host and partner in crime. We're doing well. Doing some, special episodes here and there with some guests.
Nice.
I think we've had a couple of your colleagues on.
No doubt.
This year.
No doubt.
And a few other sort of celebrities in the tech world.
Very good. Well, wish you luck with growing that.
Thank you.
And before we move into getting some of your reflections on the week, a big thank you for dropping off a load of biscuits at the booth
Loads
the
of
other
sugar.
day.
Yeah.
And these are not the American type of biscuits.
No, that's right. They're like actual confectionery.
Real Tim Tams, mint slices.
Yes.
Australians know what they are. Really delicious.
They're very nice. Now, I was educating my colleagues on the correct way to eat a Tim Tam.
Yes, you're supposed. Oh, do you want to?
Yeah, go for it.
You can have it with coffee or hot chocolate or something. And you're supposed to put it in the very hot drink and then sort of suck it up through so it melts.
There you go. To say I didn't make it up.
No, and you did the same exact demonstration, but you said milk. Maybe the milk thing.
It could be warm milk. It could
exactly.
be any warm drink.
Yeah.
It feels a bit messy.
Yeah, it could get messy.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I don't do that very often.
Have you ever tried it?
I might have done it once.
It sounds like special occasion.
Maybe you're showing international guests how you're supposed to eat it. Maybe it's a trick. I don't know.
I'd like to give it a try. I think it sounds quite good.
Yes, we should.
Yes. Well, look, I'm delighted to say Matt's joined us. Just to give us a bit of reflection on the week. Matt engages quite heavily with the developer communities here, and obviously it's a big part of reInvent. And it's not actually something we've really talked about in our coverage over the last couple of years. Just give us a bit of a insight into the world of devs here, because it's a big part of the conference.
Yeah. I guess one of the differentiators with AWS from other conferences like Ignite and that sort of thing, there is sort of the focus on developers at the other conferences, but AWS has always been developer first, And the reason for that is probably all the building blocks that they provide, right? So there's so many building blocks, which, for better or worse, potentially can become a bit confusing. But it usually they're first with a lot of the innovations and, API first, infrastructure as code first. So they're very big on getting the developers out there. There's a couple of developer programs. So there's an ambassador program, which I was a part of for a while, which is part of the partner team.
Right.
That's sort of dropping off a little bit. There's AWS Community Builders, which started in 2020. So to become a community builder, you've got to provide, do some community work throughout the year, which could be blogs, could be talking, could be speaking, at events, that sort of thing. And then there's heroes. So community builders, there's a few thousand of them around the world, I guess. I'm not sure exact number, but around the 2,000 to 3,000. Heroes, there's maybe a few hundred around the world.
And heroes are quite specific, aren't they? So what designates you being a hero?
It's a nomination process. So usually you've got to be, fairly well known in the community. Give feedback to service teams quite a lot. A lot of AWS employees know a lot of these heroes and go to them for advice. I've got a roundtable this afternoon, which will be interesting, which I've got to go to after this to give some DevX feedback to one of the teams. So, that sort of thing. So it's about, giving back. And they do it. It's a passion, a lot of the time. Sometimes it'll be part of the job. Sometimes it'll be, after hours. But it's generally, there's a lot of passion around AWS.
And what are the gold jackets all about?
Certification. So you've seen a few gold jackets around?
Seen a few. Passed one in the toilet this morning.
Did you? There was, I think, I don't even know how many exams there are, sort of around the 12 mark for certification. So obviously every cloud has certifications. AWS has around the 12 to 13 mark. I think they've refreshed their certs this year. There's some GenAI ones, obviously, now. And if you get all those certifications, then you're eligible for a gold jacket. So it's, I don't think it's for me doing a lot of exams to get a gold jacket. Probably not for me, but I do know quite a few people who have got them. A couple of my colleagues.
Yeah, the guy I passed this morning had been stopped by another person who was admiring his gold jacket.
Oh, really?
People get them genuinely delighted by it, don't they?
Yeah. I guess they wear them at like summits and events like this where people appreciate them. Yeah, all I get is glittery AWS shirts.
I was going to say bedazzled, I would say.
Does that come with the job, like the sparkling shirts?
Well, actually it does, because if you volunteer at a booth, this one, I can't remember exactly when I got it, but usually if you volunteer at a booth at Summit or reInvent, AWS will gift you a nice sort of shirt. So. And then, which a lot of the employees can't even get a lot of the time, so unless they're special.
So you fancy a gold jacket or a bedazzled shirt?
That another partner, Salesforce, also has golden jackets, and they people follow them around during events.
It's a bit like this here.
It is here, but it's also golden. So I was quite confused. Like, I'm at AWS, right? So it's also the golden, that atmosphere.
People flock to it.
Yeah,
like a beacon.
Gold is not really my color, so I think that could be a thing, but I do like the effort you put into it, and that it really adds something to the culture and the value. That's what I like. Yeah,
it's a good, I understand that you're
proud.
Thing.
Yeah, and that you're proud if you can wear it. Yeah,
very nice. And what's the conversation being going in the dev community that you engage with? Where are everyone's head? What's the sort of where the head's at in terms of where we are? The tool sets that have been talked about. Are people like, oh, we should be going a bit faster, or maybe, it's not right, or I like this, I don't like this. Like, what's the general gist?
The general gist, I guess there was a lot of, normally there's this concept of pre-invent, which you might have heard of, right?
No,
I haven't heard that one?
No.
Maybe that's in the tech community. So pre-invent is like the releases before reInvent. So maybe a month or two. And then once you start, there's releases throughout the year, but then things start ramping up in like mid to late October on the What's New sort of blogs and stuff. And as that starts ramping up, someone calls it, this is pre-invent. There's no like time, but once
it's not official.
It's not official, yeah.
But somebody marks it at some point.
It's like, it's time. It's time. It is pre-invent season.
It's like the Mariah Carey thing when she defrosts every Christmas.
That's right. She's here. Did you guys see her?
I actually haven't. I have got a funny story about it though, right? So this is a bit of a side thing on Mariah Carey of all things. So my wife, we went to see the Rockettes in Radio City a few years ago in New York. Really, really beautiful show, right? So my wife, quite inspired by this, Mariah Carey comes to London, is playing like at the O2 Arena or something like that. And in my wife's head, it's basically going to be a version of the Rockettes show with Mariah Carey doing Christmas songs.
Oh.
So my wife goes to this show, and it's like, like a Tuesday night or something, and it's like to get to the O2 is a real slog, and then to get back afterwards. So she takes the kids as well. I couldn't go that night for reasons I can't remember. I managed to duck it. I'm so glad.
I can't go. When is it?
Yeah, it's a little bit like that. Anyway, so she comes back like, kind of having had an absolutely miserable evening, because not only was it nothing like the Rockettes, but Mariah Carey did one Christmas song, like her main one, as the very last song. So she had to sit through the whole thing.
Really?
So when I saw the Christmas time thing Carey's doing in Vegas, I took a picture of it and sent it to my wife. And my wife's like, I'd need to know much more about that show before I committed to going.
Thing is, it's at the Dolby Theatre, which is apparently a really good theatre. So I was looking up to see what was on. I'm like,
right.
No.
Are you going to go?
No, I'm not.
Carey, treat it with caution. That's all I'm saying.
That's right. Where were we? Oh, yes.
Community. It was pre-invent. It was
pre-invent releases.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so the releases ramp up, and then you got reInvent where the releases ramp up. Did you see the 25 in 10 minutes, the keynote?
Yeah.
That was probably a little bit too fast, but
it was a bit of a flex, wasn't it?
It was. It was a bit of a flex. Oh, I've run out of time. Here's 25 more things.
Yeah, and 25 other things.
So that was So there's a couple of key releases in the developer community that people are excited about. There's Lambda functions used to have a hard limit of 15 minutes, which caused, a few, architectural choices to be made to get that stuff to work. There's now durable functions, which can last a year. So it's, things have, they've caught up a little bit to Microsoft have had something called durable functions.
And what does that for the layman? What does it mean?
What's that?
For the layman.
For the layman, that would be like if you normally a Lambda function is where you run code. It could be an API call. It could be whatever. Durable functions means it can do a task and it can sleep for a bit and then come back and continue that task. So it changes the architecture of a lot of these. So
it just does a nappy.
Nappy, pretty much.
Nappy function.
And then there's a container service, which is also they've got ECS, which is a container service. Another way to run code. There's multiple ways to do things on AWS, and that has like an express mode, which makes it easier to deploy. Which ECS has been complex to deploy in the past. So that's another one that the community is intrigued about. So that's good.
And anything for you personally that's stood out that you think is either needed or an interesting part of the AI stack, or?
There's a couple of things, I guess. They've brought this concept in the past 6 months called Agent Core. So everyone knows about AI agents. Coding agents is the most obvious one that people have sort of heard about. And that's AWS's way of productionizing and deploying, securely agents into corporate world, and a lot of enterprises need this sort of functionality to secure their code. Up for the first half of the year, there wasn't much in the way of authentication or protection for these agents when you deploy them. Agent Core is like an opinionated way of deploying these sort of agents in an enterprise. And there's also a whole marketplace. So AWS have the marketplace for applications. They're building a marketplace of agents and APIs and things like that.
Yeah, good shout. I guess the agent marketplace is somewhat inevitable.
Yes.
And is that going to be, in your view, say I create an agent A Mariah Carey agent, for a better term. And I'm desperate to get that on the market. Is that I can publish the marketplace and sell?
Correct.
Like, so
you can sell per use, license it.
Right.
It could be free. There's free modes.
Right,
It could be, specific reasons where you could make money, you might have a free month or free number of invocations and then, pay per use.
How strict is the validation to get your app on there?
That's a good question. I haven't looked into that. But normally, normal marketplace validation, there's a security and technical foundational review that has to be gone through. So I assume it'll be a similar sort of concept for that sort of thing, because you do have to be careful that people submitting agents, especially agents.
Mariah agent, you never you need to check that.
You never know. You can't trust it.
Can't trust it.
But the other thing is, like, legitimately, like, double agents are going to be a thing by the sounds of it in the cyber world.
Yes,
where it's doing one thing but nefariously doing something in the background. So you can't take that at all lightly.
That's right. Yeah, you've got to be careful. And I think that there's a whole industry now starting to pop up around agents and security. The security industry's always been there, but there's a new area, specialize in agent security and that sort of thing to make sure that that's being built into all the commercial security tools. So that's going to be big probably next year. There'll be a lot of, this year was the year of the agent. Next year will be, the year of secure and rolling out of agents in enterprise probably.
Very good. Well, Matt, look, thanks for taking the time to pop in and give us some highlights and a bit of an insight into one of the most important sides of reInvent that we haven't touched on that much. What's the rest of the week look like? So we're recording this on the Thursday.
Yes.
Are you here? Because there's dev stuff on the Friday as well, isn't there? The exec track tends to finish on the Thursday.
There's a little bit of stuff Friday morning, but I'm here till Saturday, so Friday will be, replay tonight for those that...
I was going to say, you're going to go?
Yeah, I'll go to replay.
Do you know who's playing?
No, I don't. But normally Werner's keynote is Thursday morning, and usually it's announced then. But his keynote is now Thursday afternoon this year, which is a bit of a change up. So
we don't know yet.
We don't know. I don't know.
No, I didn't see anything on the way in. I'm just having a quick look. No,
usually he'll announce. He'll be there to sort of get people in the mood. And now his keynote will finish at 4:30. Replay starts around 7 or 8. So.
Well, have a wonderful rest of the week.
Thank you.
Lovely to see you. Thanks again for the Tim Tams.
No worries. Glad you enjoyed. Delicious. Because you need more carbs in Vegas, right?
I mean, I honestly, I actually really did need a bit of a sugar boost because I wasn't feeling great at the beginning of the week. A couple of us, Ez wasn't feeling great either.
No.
And I'm not blowing smoke to say that eating half a pack of the mint thin things really perked me up. Thanks again, Matt.
No worries. Cheers. Thanks for having me.
And we're back. So, before we go home, let's just do a few reflections on the week and what we thought about it. It's been an interesting week in the sense of it hasn't been a fireworks week. It has been a week of doubling down and building on what's been announced at previous reInvents and what's fairly typical within the industry. Rob, anything stood out for you?
Yeah, so I think it's been AI wall to wall, hasn't it? As we said, it's like an AI conference now. We're about to go into the sovereign point, which is also very important. But I think one of the things that stood out is still an incredible investment going on in the hardware, right? Cloud needs a lot of foundation to be able to make it work very effectively. Chip speeds are increasing, all that sort of stuff. And again, it's Graviton 5 got announced this morning, doubling speeds, things like that. And in fact, Apple came out on stage and basically said to run their architecture, they need the scale of cloud to be able to make it work. So we should never forget the incredible effort that goes into the infrastructure to make it all flash and bang and be whizzy and stuff.
Any big things stand out for you, Ez?
I think what stood out for me are two things. Mostly in the Europe area, I must say. The startups, how can we help them in the ecosystem? I think that's a huge shout out of Tanusha. How can we really help them take the next level? Because there are huge startups potentials, but maybe they're being blocked too much, especially by regulated environments. And the other one is traditional departments getting into the conversation of AI. And I think we've all seen that with agents and implications in the business context, but now they're more and more in the front of those conversations. And I think that's very excited. You see the lines blur more and more between business and IT. And I think that's being accelerated by AI.
Yeah, I thought that showed a little bit in the changing nature of some of the things that were on the expo floor.
Yep.
The expo floor at reInvent to me always felt quite like infrastructural. And maybe that's a little unfair. There was plenty going on there, and there always has been. And it's always an interesting expo to walk around. But this year, there was a lot further up the stack stuff. Like, obviously, it was wall-to-wall AI, as these things tend to be these days. But there was a lot of like application vendors there. There was a lot of integration technologies that would be happening further up the stack, right?
Absolutely, because normally you'd see like a ServiceNow, a Salesforce, WhatsApp. They're also all part of that same expo floor. So I think that integration is now really embraced, and we've seen that in the last 2 to 3 years that we've heard about it, but now you can actually see the full potential. And
I think, and this is just going on my sketchy memory, but there was consumer technology there, like the Ray-Ban glasses from Meta that you guys were looking at and things like that, which I don't think I've seen it reinvent.
Not in that way, not in the same way. Although there was a business bit behind it, and they've used the Ray-Bans as a pull to the stand, but more consumer tech, definitely. I think that's the way it's starting to shift, the convergence now. It's the C word again.
Indeed. And where do we stand on adoption lag? So over the course of the 3 conferences we've covered this year, we have discussed adoption lag in multiple different ways. And for those who haven't heard some of those conversations, that means that the tech industry is accelerating at a prodigious rate. As you've seen, it's all about scale this year and bringing in new scale technologies as organizations are either starting or coming out of the end of their proof of concept phases. And therefore, there's a potential gap between where the technology exists and the rhetoric around that and the actual ability for organizations to take that on. And that might be as a result of their investment or their capability or their ability, their headspace as a business to be able to actually do it. Is the adoption lag still prevalent? Do we think it is closing down? It seemed to me that AWS have addressed it head on with AWS Transform. And in some of the industry spotlight conversations, we've talked to their business unit leaders on how that's being used within sectors. But what do we think? Do we think the adoption lag is real?
I think it's real. I think some of the results, though, that have been bandied about this conference and a few of the others are so large that it's pushing a will to say we need to get this. So you're talking 10x plus type productivity gains. Nobody's going to turn that down. So I think it's a kind of I think everybody realizes that they have to do it. It's just the complexity of changing the size of the organizations to get them to implement this stuff. It's just big and hard and difficult. So I think it's all right. But yeah, there's a sizable lag. I think if you're an organization who hasn't started exploring with the how am I going to get access to these types of benefits, you're well behind the curve now. Most have tried some form of integration into their environment.
I think what we also see is, do you on the like an easy level, do you use it for productivity? Well, we actually also hear a lot of our guests say this is completely shifting your business state of mind, like reinventing your governance, the way you do business, reinventing the way you have tech coming towards your end customers. Is it that? Because that's like huge. I think that the exec teams that are able to do that, to create that vision and understand that, those are ahead of the curve, I would say.
Yeah. What do you think about it from a cultural perspective?
Well, it goes hand in hand, I think. If you have that vision in the exec board and you bring a culture with that is customer focused minded and that helps you understand how tech can help you drive more customer success or employee engagement, it will help drive that culture that embraces AI in the way that it really utilizes towards business value. So it goes hand in hand. Just AI without the culture, I don't think it's ever going to reach what it could be.
Wait, you never get to a good place in any technology-driven change by starting with a technology, do you?
Well, you got the chase of the ROI, which I always think is quite interesting, which is a lot of people try and tend towards, I'm going to save. I mean, you can understand the motivation behind that because there's economic pressure everywhere, but there is as you say, there's a completely reinvent who you are and what you do. There's a huge potential there, and that could have outweighing, rather than chasing savings, maybe you should be chasing something completely different.
And if you're able to do that and show that as an exec team, you share that growth mindset, that innovative mindset, that you want your teams all the way down to your tech teams also to show and continuously develop themselves. So I think it's also, lead by example.
Yeah.
So hopefully that gives you a sense of what went on this week. It was a very boiled up summary of the situation. Of course, there's a lot of other things that went on around the edge of that. Matt's given you an indication of the sorts of things that he was excited about from a developer perspective. But to bring to a close one of the big themes that we've been talking about over the last 2 conferences is this intersection of science fact and science fiction, where books, TV, film have been representing technological ideas and actually the industry of IT and tech, and positioning it within a fictional world with fictional consequences. And sometimes that has been very motivational. So it's actually driven thinking in the tech world. The likes of Star Trek has done that extremely well. And sometimes it's been post-apocalyptic and dark in terms of of what might happen as a result of technology in society. And we've been observing this with our guests for the last couple of weeks and asking them what is standing out for them as a good example of technology in film and a bad example of technology in film or TV or books. And it was triggered by the fact that when you go onto the expo floors at the moment, you see a lot of the things that have been in sci-fi films and sci-fi fiction for quite a while, just readily available now on the show floor. So, Ez, how have you been framing that and thinking about that as we've been talking to the guests? And did any other examples of ones that resonated for you pop into your head?
Well, I actually want to go for a book because we've been to Barnes and Noble.
Oh yeah, that was a good experience actually.
Yeah, and I think we were all. Well, it was also to fight jet lags, I believe, but it really helped us slow down and get into a sentiment of, how it used to be. Just walking, strolling around, watching DVDs and books. So if I take a book and technologies in there, I would go for The Circle by Dave Eggers.
Oh yeah,
I know it well.
Very good.
So that's a novel where a tech company promises frictionless connection, transparency, and progress. And in doing so, it quietly rewires what people believe is good. And I think that's where we're in right now. We hear a lot about storytelling or the narrative that people use to explain AI and the potential of AI. But I think we should not look at AI as technology adoption, but more of a cultural negotiation. So how can we leverage it, or are we going to leverage it to build a better society? I think that's also something we've been talking about throughout the show.
It has, and for me, there's a framing aspect to that, and the word I could never say. Someone say that word.
I'll leave it to you guys to.
I'm not
anthropomorphized.
Yeah, like if you do that, that sort of suggests something and changes the relationship you have with AI. I think whether it's valid or not, and that's a debate. But how then that is sequenced into society as a result of thinking about it like that and creating that framing, I think is an important question for us right now. We're sort of doing that almost by accident. Like every time you see AI manifested, it's some digital version of a human or something like that, or it's got a name like Jack or something like that, and it's like my jury is thoroughly out on that.
I don't think you'll stop people doing it. It's human trait in it. It's one of those things. It's like when Clippy turned up in Word, it was completely useless, but people still found it, a connection to Clippy.
I don't buy that. Like I didn't. Did you?
Yeah, I did. Because it jumps around and
it's exciting, isn't it? So something different in the experience.
Oh, God. Like each to their own.
But this is why we like Circus as a hotel, because it also has the funny parts.
Yeah, for sure.
And edit point. Sorry, what were you?
Yeah, just pick up the conversation.
Right, okay. Sorry, Ben. So as ever, Ez has done something deep and meaningful, and I've probably got more of a surface level observation on films that got it wrong. So we were watching Minority Report, which is a film that still has a big moral conversation underneath it, obviously. Famous storyline, but the bit that they got completely wrong is information and how it flows. So they're running around with bits of see-through plastic as if that's your memory stick or whatever, and they're still in these moments transferring all the information 5 feet across the room, or he's carrying around his music on a little plastic disc. It's just like they completely missed connectivity as being it's all there, it's all connected information flow and stuff like that. It actually comes across in the film as very clunky. Within
a film that got a lot right, though.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot in there. But also when he's doing all the things with his gloves and the information flow and he's doing all that would all be done by the computer now as well. So he wouldn't actually put a human in the loop. The human would find the person and then present the details. And he does all the investigation that a simple agentic thing could do these days. So I think they missed on two fronts, the way the human would interact with the tech and the way the tech actually just passes information around. It's quite interesting to see because that film's only 23 years old.
But it was famous for its futurism work at the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they had quite a big team of futurists on that film, if I remember rightly. And it gets a lot right in the sense of personalised pop-up ads as you're walking around.
Oh, yeah, the retinal scan, everything's off that.
The nature of the car shapes look exactly like those Zooms that are now driving around American cities. The touch interface, though, the actual working with information, right? The touch interface is absolutely spot on. I mean, it looks basically like an iPad, like a giant version of an iPad. You don't need gloves for it, but the interface looks right.
Or the idea of how a human interfaces with the computer, but the way they were doing it and the reason they were doing it, that would all be done by the system today.
I think the use of data and transferring of data and data manipulation is probably the bit they may be missed on. I would contend within an otherwise quite successful futuristic.
It stood out as being really obviously clunky though when they started doing it. There's big bits in the film where they're moving things around to interface.
Looks a bit weird.
It does. It feels weird that you just go, well, that's not, because in such a futuristic setting, it looks like, well, why are they doing that? Surely you'd fix all that.
So I'm going to return to the one that comes up a lot in these conversations, has come up a lot in these conversations, and probably will do, either until we admit that this isn't the future or something happens. Anyway, it's Terminator. And the reason I've brought it up is less about the film itself. I think we've actually covered it twice this week, and we covered it at least once the week before last, so I won't go into that again. But what was really timely is, as we've been going through this and observing the intersection of fact and fiction around this, James Cameron has actually talked about Terminator. And he wants to make I'm quoting here, he wants to make a new Terminator film before the modern world catches up with his ideas. Quote unquote, we're living in a sci-fi world. We're having to deal with problems that in the past only existed in books and films. Now we're living it for real. I mean, that's pretty much the point we've been making, I think. And the guy who kind of has done the film that everyone's talking about in relation to AI is observing the same thing. And not only that, it'll stop him making Avatar films, which I think we'd all be grateful about.
And it's within the same generation. That's fascinating. That shows the speed of...
When was Terminator 182? 1982?
Oh, probably.
1984, was it? Something around that. So what, we're like 30 years... 40, oh, bloody hell, that's 40 years ago, isn't it?
40 year cycle. Incredible. So what else has been standing out for you this week in Vegas?
We have quite an impressive Airbnb.
Oh, you mean the Avengers HQ?
Yeah.
Avengers HQ. yeah. The theming is quite... there's been commitment to the theming of that Airbnb, hasn't there? It's not like a slight nod towards It's when at breakfast Spider-Man is staring down at you from above the cupboards.
Every single picture in the house is related in some way to Marvel's Avengers, and each of the rooms are themed. So I'm in the Guardians of the Galaxy Intergalactic HQ. Did you check out where you are, Ez?
Something with a Panther's heart.
Oh, you're
in
the Black Panther's HQ.
Yeah, I am.
I'm in Tony Stark's thing.
Massive room.
It is a nice. I did end up with the best room in the house, David, but it was by complete accident, though. It was the what's behind this door? Walk in. Oh, it's another massive bedroom.
Something like that.
Was it worth the drive? Because it took us quite some while to get there.
Yeah, it's worth saying that the house we're staying in is not actually in Las Vegas, is it? It's in a separately designated area called North Las Vegas, or north of Las Vegas.
And Marcel has in fact driven us around what appears to be, or what feels like, most of the suburbs in Las Vegas as well. So I feel like I know a lot more about the area now, thanks to Marcel.
So Marcel's plan was that when we have stayed in Airbnbs before, off the strip, we stay south and then drive in, and you hit traffic coming in. So Marcel was like, "Oh, we're going to stay north of Las Vegas. It's just a big freeway going in, no traffic." How'd that work out, Marcel?
Not good.
Funnily enough, traffic.
And we've been using Waze to avoid the traffic that wasn't supposed to be there. So this mythical lack of traffic, Waze is redirecting us, and we've been down through a few dead ends, maybe bounced over a few wrong turns, had to do the old 4x4 over the roadworks today. Bit of an adventure.
It has been a bit of an adventure, and then we sit here on the Thursday, just about to head off, and in the last two records, and we've been using the equipment that we use for this since the beginning of Cloud Reality. So this is our fourth reinvent, I think. So 3 years of use out of this. Multiple items of the equipment seem to have failed, like almost all at the same time. Strange, isn't it?
It all went, didn't it? All this morning, all the cables it's like somebody came in last night and sabotaged it. I'm going to go with that.
And now we've got blue stickers everywhere.
Of all the broken bits of equipment.
Yes, because Marcel, that's his way to, pinpoint what is broken, actually. But the question is, what does not have a blue sticker at the moment?
I think there's more blue stickers than not blue stickers. I think we're heading towards a bit of a refresh. So I think if for no other reason than the equipment is now almost completely broken, I think it's time to go home.
I think it probably
It is. If you would like to discuss any of the issues that we have covered at this year's AWS event and how they might impact you and your business, please get in touch with us at cloudrealities@capgemini.com. We're on LinkedIn and on Substack, so we'd love to hear from you. Feel free to connect and DM if you have any questions for the show to tackle. And of course, please rate and subscribe to our podcast. It really helps us improve the show. A huge thanks to all our guests, Chandra, Tim, Tanusha, Rob, Howard, Scott and Mustafa. Our sound and editing wizards Ben and Louis, our producer Marcel, and of course to all our listeners. See you in another reality next week.